This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'll just give people a couple of minutes. Okay, let's get started. Cool. So thanks to everyone who's joined us so far. We're really excited to be having this conversation with you and hearing from some of you on such an important topic. I'll do a quick intro on me. I'm Yasmin. I head up the people team here at Localyze. I'm actually brand new myself. I only started 3 weeks ago. So this is a really fun thing to do so early on. Before joining, I spent around 5 years helping to scale other startups, both in the States and in Europe. So the topic of employee experience is a big one for me and one that I'm pretty much constantly thinking about. And it's also at the heart of our mission here at Localyze, and that mission being to break down borders, one relocation at a time. So I'm sure we'd love to hear a quick intro from our speakers today. So I'll pass it on to you. If you can just tell us who you are, and then, without sounding too corny, what it is on the subject of employee experience that really keeps you up at night. And we can start with you, Scott.
Yeah, hi there. So I'm Scott Leishman. I'm Chief People Officer at Raft, based in London. I spent most of my career working in big tech, so Google, Microsoft, etc., where the employee experience is great for the most part. But for the last 10 or so years, we've been working in startups and trying to take some of the good from those companies and bring that across to smaller businesses to make sure that we can onboard and get people up to speed quickly and have a great experience in either relocating or moving between borders. So the thing that keeps me up at night, or the thing that I'm passionate about most, is getting people to up to speed quickly in a startup, limited amount of resource, even tougher in the current climate. So getting people onboarded, productive, and up to speed in terms of delivery quickly is what I'm most passionate about.
Great, thanks, Scott. Should we start with, we go next to you, Reese?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Reese. I'm People Operations Lead at Personio, a HRIS company, and I'm based in Munich. And yeah, we have a pretty wide range of relocation cases, because about 20 to 25% of all of our new hires have some kind of relocation aspect. So we did, I think, 165 total relocations across the course of last year. So we're very busy within the team. I would echo what Scott says in terms of trying to build up a model within a startup or a scale-up and budget concerns. But I guess the refreshing thing is that the worries that keep you up differ from case to case. So it's never quite the same thing that's bothering you. Sometimes it's visas, sometimes it's housing, but there is at least variety in your concerns.
Absolutely. And we'll end with you, Philip.
Cool. Hey everybody. I'm Philip. I'm director at Deconium for the department P&O services. So the organization, which I sometimes call more of the HR operations organization. I've joined Deconium just a year ago. So it's last month was my anniversary, 1 year. And we have been going through quite some hectic times in terms of hiring. We've been onboarding three-digit number of employees in the last year. Over the course of the last a couple of years, it has been really a roller coaster, ups and downs, hiring abroad, hiring locally. And with the experience I have from also having moved to South Africa, to the Netherlands, now being in Hamburg since 2019, I've also had quite some relocation topics myself, some experiences, and that's what basically keeps me up at night, where I think of, okay, what was back in the days, what I wished for, having a platform like Localyze, where I can say, okay, that guides me through visa processes, etc. And that's what I want to bring to the employees at Deconium, to actually have a hassle-free relocation for them. But then also, it doesn't stop for me at the relocation, but also at the overall employee experience, because it's for me like a gyroscope. If it constantly spins and needs to spin, and we need to make sure that the people with the ever-changing environment are also having a good experience when it comes to working with us.
Absolutely. Well, happy anniversary for last month. The first year is always an exciting one. And good to know that we're all being kept up at night with similar thoughts. So we'll move on to questions. We'll then see a quick demo from Anthony, our head of product, and then we'll end with some Q&As from the audience. So first question for you, Reese. You touched upon this in your intro, times being pretty tough right now. So just want to sort of understand how you balance priorities around employee experience and trying to maximize retention, while at the same time being mindful of current economics.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance. And I think, as Philip touched upon there, it's not just visas and immigration. And I think there's kind of a juxtaposition that everyone is minding budgets a little bit more carefully, but at the same time, the expectations of employees in terms of what a relocation looks like, particularly in the post-COVID world, is probably more thorough and more caring than it has been in the past. So I think, yeah, just trying to make the most of what you do have. So partnering with companies like Localyze, where you have, case managers who really take care and look after people through that immigration process, which can be extremely stressful. But then I think it's trying to justify also to the business to keep making those investments in the ancillary services, the housing, school searches, whatever it might be. Each case is unique, but the cost these days of not doing that is potentially very serious when it comes to attrition rates, when it comes to people not settling in, as Scott touched upon, wanting to get people hitting the ground running and starting in the business on the best foot forward. So I do see that still a key part of the investment is making that initial investment in the employee and then seeing that pay off maybe a little bit down the line for the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Scott or Philip, do you have anything you want to add to what we said?
Yeah, no, I think as I sort of mentioned in my overview, for us, it's we want to invest. We're spending more time actually with those people because we know that we've sort of slowed down hiring, but we still have the same ambitions. So them getting to productivity is kind of our key priority. So how can we make that move easier, seamless? How can we help do things on the outside that mean that they have find properties, anything that would distract them from their ability to get up to speed and deliver and settling into a new country is something that's really important. Even from having buddies here who can then support them with signing up for bank accounts, people that have been through that before, just basically spending as much time as we can within the team to make that move seamless. And that is the challenge, and it is something that we're really passionate about. But I know a lot of companies now are looking at relocations and going, should I really need to do that? There's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of talent in location. And when I sort of catch up with my sort of regular monthly meetups with other kind of HR professionals and people, team professionals, they're definitely seeing a pushback from the business, and there must be talent in location. We shouldn't really need to relocate. My view in that is that I want to build a diverse workforce, and I want to open up as many opportunities to be able to push that forward and push that agenda. So closing off a relocation is something that I'm not keen to do, and so making sure that you get that ROI and they get up to speed and they have an impact, and they have an impact quickly is really important.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the investment in like a globally dispersed workforce is definitely worth it. Philip, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think for me the key is what Scott also mentioned. You want to get the people up and running as fast as possible because you made an investment. You kind of want to look as a company also for the return on investment. And what we try to do at Diconium is to have really like local communities where people can then meet already before they start working with us, some locals, like a buddy system and mentoring system, because I think most of the time we forget that the devil is in the detail. It's good to have the kind of visa process and that you have all the details also through the platform where you see in which step people are. But the devil is really in like people come to from foreign countries outside the EU to Germany in our case, and most of the time, and there are some really weird things happening in Germany for foreigners which they don't understand. And those are the things which we try to put our focus on with the communities and the buddy system, so that people know, okay, in the first year you need to do your tax return, and it's you're obliged to do that, and this is how Germany works. So you need to make an appointment at the embassy to do X, Y, Z. Those kind of things are details which sometimes are forgotten, and that's where I think a platform helps, but B, also the social contact and the human contact, which is very important in our case, especially moving then people to Germany from other cultural backgrounds.
Agreed. And I think also you can document all of these stages as much as you want. But ultimately, from my experience, most of these are in local language as well. So unless you actually speak German, there's no way that you're going to even be able to navigate the website. So you will need someone to lean on for those types of things. It was the same. We were moving at Skype, we moved hundreds of people to Stockholm, similar structure, similar process, even just registering for healthcare and all of that, all in Swedish. So we needed that kind of buddy system to have a professional work buddy, but then another buddy who was of local origin, who could help with all of the complexities that are the language difficulties.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts to think about. We touched upon some of the next question about, you know, employee satisfaction with their relocation process and productivity, and how will they settle in. What sort of connections have you seen in your personal experience around that and retention, and sort of why it's so important? We'll start with you this time, Philip.
Sure. I mean, when it comes to employee satisfaction, what you want to make sure is that already in the pre-boarding, that's the first time your new employee will touch base with you in the recruiting process. So that's, I think, where you can do a lot right and a lot wrong. And if you do that wrong already in that little window when you hire people, as well as then in the relocation process, that's where I have seen that this is kind of the multiplicator. If people feel taken care of from the very beginning, and you as an HR department, people organization, or whatever you want to call it, take care of these people and you engage with them, you have really one-on-one calls also to understand what their personal need is, what they want. Then we see that on the long run, people have a much longer stay with us, and they're much more satisfied because they feel from the very first moment this bonding, which you want to create with a new candidate in order to keep them as long as you can, but also keep them happy, because only happy employees will make happy customers. And that's kind of, I think, the key, that we need to look at the satisfaction from the very beginning, so that then the satisfaction goes on the customer satisfaction, because they will be delivering a proper product or consulting to the customers of us.
And how do you sort of measure that? Do you really think about, do you get feedback from employees? Do they volunteer that feedback? Is that your sort of data point?
Yeah, so that's where we use data points in terms of feedback questionnaire. We have weekly feedbacks in general in the organization, but also from all relocated employees. We do one-on-one feedback, so where we actually engage with them, but also send them a questionnaire.
Makes sense. Scott, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as business, we also do one-on-one. I think that's really important, just to get questionnaires are great, but I think during the COVID time, I think lots of people got fed up with questionnaires, because that was the only way to reach out. So we're trying to put a human aspect back into it again, and meet up and chat through challenges and improvements that we could make to learn for the future. We're building up to, we're fundraising at the moment, so we're not doing a huge amount of hiring. So it gives us time to now start preparing for what will be the next growth phase. As mentioned, I've been through that multiple times before, so it's just starting to put those processes in for the next bit, and the only way you can learn what works for us and what improvements that you can make is by spending significant time with the people that have been through it. And from my point, the feedback from Localyze has been great. We've even moved senior exec through the Localyze platform, and I'm used to kind of doing those types of relocations much more hands-on. But we let it go, and we let it go through the flow and the feedback in terms of the processes, the support, the guidance that they needed to sort out the visas, and everything was fantastic. So I think this, can really help. There's of course other areas that we need to do as a business as well, and that's why that feedback is so important.
And do you feel like you get the same level of honesty with that feedback in person events, like you mentioned, as you do when you do things like surveys?
So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it's just me, but most of my employees are pretty honest, and with good and the bad. But I think part of our culture is that we allow feedback on everything. It's something that we really push, that kind of honesty, from the leadership team down to the office manager and so on. So from our side, that's part of the culture, is to be open and honest about concerns. And I think also, with my significant experience, you can tell in person and not whether there is other issues at play, because of the body language and stuff. It's much easier to do that than it is through a questionnaire where you get no context to their answers.
Yeah, I agree. Reese, anything you want to add?
Yeah, apologies. My laptop chose that moment to crash completely, so I missed the conversation. But with specific respect to surveys, yeah, I think we take a similar approach. We do have data through a kind of quarterly survey where we have some very simple metrics that we can kind of track in a flowchart basis, and some open-ended questions. And we do often get, essays worth of feedback when we have an open-ended question, when people are really honest. But I think in general, you just have a pretty good idea with a sniff test. If you're looking after a case, if it's gone well, if there have been issues. So we use that more to flag, what are the consistent areas that we can improve on. Something like housing, for example, we know is a real pain point for our employees. We don't really have the budget to do a lot with that at the moment, unfortunately. So we're trying to find solutions, but we have the data points then to recognize this is something that we need to work on and try and find solutions.
I think an interesting point on this feedback which we are receiving, for example, is that before we used Localyze, we had more of a boutique relocator, where it was really emails going back and forth and Excel spreadsheets for the HR department. And what we saw is that it were similar problems with housing, for example. Like the feedback is the same, and that's then if you look at the feedback, it doesn't matter what you choose. It's in the end of the day, it's also the market. Like if you don't have apartments, it doesn't matter which service provider you're going to be using, and that's the interesting part of when we collect the feedback. We also look a bit of comparing it to what we did before, what we used before, to then identify, like, did it get worse? Did it get better or stay the same? And sometimes it's also, you do a system implementation from something more manual. And if it stays the same quality, then you can also already be happy, because for the customer it's the same, but for internal purposes, for us, it's much easier.
Yeah, so it sounds like you take quite a feedback-driven approach when you look at programs that you want to work with and partner with to create that experience for your employees. Would love to hear a little bit more. You've touched upon points, I think, all of you, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of specific improvements that you've seen after implementing Localyze. And we can start with you, Scott.
Cool. So from the platform we use most is the relocation, the visa application. Similarly, we used a boutique firm, which involved lawyers, email communication backwards and forwards, missed emails. Sometimes the candidates themselves didn't know where they were, what was next, and it was hard for the people function. And at that time, the people function was me. So it was hard for me to do everything all of the time and keep on top of all of the emails. So the two things that have improved dramatically are the communications through the portal, so everyone knows, everyone can see the communication It's simple, it's easy. You can see if there's outlying questions that haven't been answered by candidates. It's a really easy kind of process to be able to follow internally and automate. I mean, we're an automation business at Raft, so I want to automate as much of the people function as possible as well, and this allows us to do that. But the second thing is just the ease of the steps. Everyone knows where they've got to be, what they've got to do next. Again, similar to the product we're building here for the supply chain industry, is that there's that task manager. They know the deadlines, they know where they've got to be, and that just allows everyone to plan and adjust to what the timeframes are going to be better, are going to be like as well. And in a time over the last year where we've had war and challenges regarding getting visas in various countries, that kind of sort of openness of timescales has really helped them settle down some of the concerns from employees, where previously they're just sitting waiting, no email communication from a lawyer because they've not had anything themselves, so they don't think about doing updates, whereas this allows that sort of update and that ongoing communication to flow between the candidate and the team at Localyze through the platform.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear. Philip, anything you want to add on to that?
Oh, sure. I mean, for us, it's pretty similar. It's the feedback which we're receiving is we're a tech company, and the company I worked for before also tech. So our employees don't want to go back and forth with emails with like long text, and this is what you need to do next, and this is what the next step is, and please wait till Friday, and then this will happen. They will know immediately, more or less, what will be happening. They want to know step by step what the status is. They're pretty impatient, I must also say, and this is what the platform then tells them, like, hey, it's going to be in 3 weeks. That's what it is. That's the appointment you're going to get. And to be quite honest, people will then also look themselves, and, yeah, I found this, but the appointment is faster if I do it this way. And we always go back then, hey, there's a process, there's step-by-step approach. We give you full transparency. So if you follow this, then everything will be fine. And that's where then people also appreciate it. And this is the feedback which we've been receiving constantly, is that they really appreciate the full transparency in the process and knowing exactly when to be where and to do what. And that's what sometimes has been missing in the past, that you have been doing emails back and forth and you actually didn't know what the status is. Is it green? Is it yellow? Where to go? So that's our experience and the feedback we're receiving.
Well, we love finding solutions for impatient people. So I'm happy to hear the feedback. And what about you, Reese? Do you have anything else you want to add on?
Yeah, I think I would echo that experience. The provider that we were using prior to Localyze was very impersonal, and the feedback scores were, to be quite frankly honest, atrocious. It was basically, here's some information about how you go about getting a visa, you're on your own. So I think with the platform, you have the nice blend. Obviously, you have the technology. It's very kind of clear guidelines in terms of what's going to happen and when, and what's expected from the employee, so everything's clear. But behind the technology, they also have the case managers, so they have a human face, which I think is also a super important element of the experience, because they feel like they have someone there that's, you know, going to bat for them, able to explain for them, you know, when things are needed or if there's any issues. And then from our side as well, there's just much kind of greater visibility on, you know, what's a realistic timeline for us to get this visa sorted, so we can manage the TA teams, managing the hiring managers, so managing the expectations within the business as well. So it's just a lot smoother.
Yeah, I think that's it, like automating a really complicated process as much as possible without losing that personal touch, which is easy to do if you don't get it right. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I think that's a nice sort of segue to Anthony. Happy to hear that you're happy with the product. He's head of product, so a big person to thank. So I'm going to pass it over to him, who's going to do a quick demo. Oh, great, there you are.
There you go, my camera's just popped up. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Yasmin. As everyone mentioned, I'm Anthony. I'm the head of product here at Localyze and been with the company for nearly 9 months now. So a lot of team behind the scenes to thank for all of the stuff, not just me. I did spend 8 years previously in e-commerce, and it's a really nice change being somewhere where the product makes a positive difference in people's lives and breaking down borders rather than selling people things. So everyone here knows when going through, I think there's a video popping up. Everyone here knows when going through relocation, the process is like tricky anxiety-inducing, and often very confusing. And here at Localyze, we want to remove all of that in the relocation process and make it as easy and simple as possible for employees to cross borders. And as our panelists here mentioned, being able to see the entire process and explain it clearly to the individual is really vitally important. That's why when redesigning our employee experience, or as we call it, the talent platform, we want to make sure the information is where they need it. The user experience was intuitive, and they could also access the application on mobiles. When they are on the go, they can see what they need and access the documents in one place. During our research, one of the main points we heard was actually it's really hard to keep an eye of the entire, to keep an overview of the entire case in one place. Immigration and relocation has many different elements to keep track of. So that's why we designed the overview page here, with the goal in mind to give talent a better focus and guidance. And on this page, you can have quick access to all that relevant information. So if we start looking at the UI, what you can see at the top here is, if you start looking at the UI, the progress bar at the top here shows the progress the talent has made so far and how many steps they've got left to complete. Next to this, you'll always see the next key date that has been added to the case, whether it's an appointment date, a travel date, or a starting date. Below this header, the next step the talent needs to do is made obvious and visible, or if Localyze is doing something right now, we will also show this. This gives a clear focus as to what is next. So if we take a look at the next section in a bit more detail, you can see the talent needs additional information about the new destination country. We have knowledge pages, so they can find out what they need to do in the country they're moving to. Or if they're interested in partner offers, we also highlight them here on the page. And we're in the process of building out a marketplace for talents to access these offers themselves and allowance you as an HR team give them. If we continue on, because obviously relocation documents are a key element, they're all stored in the profile here in one place, and you can get them through this link. And as people said, the case manager, that personal touch, the talent can always see this right at the bottom with the working hours and the way to get in touch with the case manager. Another challenge during relocation journey is to know in advance what will happen 2 to 3 weeks down the line. Employees obviously want to know so they can prepare accordingly. And one of Localyze's goals is to bring more transparency to the whole bureaucracy. And that's why we built the journey flow here. Talents can check their step, but also see other steps of their journey, preview them, and check what needs to be done down the line. When a step has been completed, you can see it here and review it in a separate section at the bottom. In summary, the My Journey page provides an overview of the entire case, showing all steps along the way, including current to-dos, upcoming steps, and completed steps. Now let's have a look at one of those steps in a bit more detail. Each step is an action, an item on your to-do list. Talents are asked to fill in information, add documents, or submit dates. Once it's done, talents can save and continue and move on to the next one. What's also new is that you can see who is responsible for the task. So there's no more confusion or whether they need to do it, or the case manager needs to do it, or the HR manager needs to sign something. We also highlight clear dependencies of the steps, so employees know if there's something blocking them. So here you can see, to verify the green arrow button, they also need to apply for their health insurance. One of the biggest requests we got from our users was to make the application available mobile. As when they're on the go, when they're on the way to their appointments, checking emails, they want to pull up Localyze and see what they need to do, see the documents, check the documents last minute. And with this new release, we have made sure that is possible. The same action talent needs to take on a desktop is available on the mobile device. And you can see the overview page there. And now as we navigate through the journey page, you can see the steps and the guidance designed with mobile in mind, so people can read and digest the information when they need it. So that was a very quick demo of our new release of our talent application. And so with that, I'll hand back over to Yasmin for the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Perfect. So now I think we're going to hear from the audience. We've got some questions. So we'll just wait for those ones to come in. Okay, so here is one for Philip. Can you tell us a little bit more about the International Employees Onboarding Buddies program? What are your tips for anyone starting a program like this one?
Sure. So I think one of the key elements when starting an onboarding buddy program is to look at what job is the person going to be performing. So you have the technical onboarding buddy to get the person onboarded in the technicalities, and then you have also the onboarding buddy who is either also has been going through a relocation, him or herself, to that country. That always helps to get these people together, but also some locals. So what I would always suggest is to get not only a one-on-one onboarding buddy, but more of a group, so that you have people which you can connect each other with on the experiences, but also as a more of a local expert. And also what we do is that we internally allow people to sign up for such program, so that they say, hey, I'm based in Hamburg. There's a person coming in internationally from wherever, and I want to support that person on their matters in the first month or even a couple of months. And that's where normally then also a personal connection is built, so that you come new to a country, a city, and everybody knows who's new somewhere. You don't know which football club to go to, which pub to go to, etc. So that's where we also then have already like a local community then for these people who are joining to a new country or a new city.
Yeah, I can imagine that makes all the difference. I actually relocated myself to New York a few years ago, and having that in place just made everything so much more or less daunting, moving to a whole new city. I've got another question for Reese. You mentioned quarterly surveys for anyone that's relocated. So what are the questions that you ask, and then what do you report onto the execs?
Yeah, so we try and keep it fairly high level, very simple. Would you recommend Localyze service to a friend? How would you rate Localyze's information sharing? How would you recognize Personio's support internally? What did you make of Personio's relocation budget? They're just the kind of simple trackers that we can then, kind of plot on a very simple graph. Are we moving in the right direction in terms of feedback? And then we have some open-ended questions where they can be a bit more frank and honest about the experience. So as I touched upon earlier, housing is something that we often hear about in that particular platform, and the troubles that people have, particularly in Dublin, one of our key locations where the housing market is just absolutely wild, and it's a pain for everyone. So we get a little bit more open, kind of honest feedback there. And then when it comes to sharing with the execs, it's very easy then to just give a kind of a brief overview. So we've just gone through a quarterly survey for Q4 of last year, and we're able to say, hey, look, we've brought on a new providers over the last half a year. The customer satisfaction scores have gone up 80% across the board. So a very pleasing trend across all of our offices and across Personio support. And, when it comes to the specific feedback, here are what we know the issues are. We know people are still having pain points with housing, for example. So then we can flag to them and hopefully have a discussion around what we can do about that within the budget constraints that we have at the moment.
And Scott, are there any other questions that you tend to ask your employees that Reese didn't mention?
No, I think those are most of the straightforward ones. I guess the biggest question for us is, what could we do to make your life easier? As the main one as well. That is a bit open-ended, so you do get kind of lots of different feedback there. But also it's, what impact did relocating have on your productivity? So again, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, which is key for us as a smaller startup, is getting those people up to speed quickly. So what could we have done better really to allow you to focus more on work? And it differs. I mean, obviously, if they have family, finding schools, all of these things are very emotional things to someone as a young professional just moving themselves, different impacts. So it's about really trying to understand all of the challenges and then being able to prepare for it in the future.
Yeah. We have another question for Anthony this time. So what's the next talent and or HR platforms? What new features are users excited about, and what's in store?
Good question. I suppose a lot of housing comments here from the panelists, but in terms of the talent application, I think there's a few things we're doing now that should be released over the next few weeks is to really make sure that we give the talents relocating a good onboarding experience into Localyze, what they can expect. Expectation management in relocation is huge, massive. So like, what can you expect for Localyze? What do you need to do yourself? Those sorts of things. And also a clear overview after they've completed their, what we call the case evaluation, to making sure that after we've evaluated their case, we know what visa they're getting, what steps need to take, very clearly saying like in things they can't skip, you are going to get this type of visa, you're going to be expecting this, and this is how long it's going to take. Because we get lots of questions straight off the bat, which are like, what visa, even though people have been told, so things you can't skip. So that's one thing. One really exciting other releases we're looking for, I mentioned it earlier, is building out like an allowance and marketplace within the talent experience and the HR. We know that relocation doesn't just cover immigration, right? So we want to make sure that as we kind of build out our partner services, maybe one individual might want temporary housing, one individual might want school searches, and if there's a particular budget that HR can allocate to relocation, the individual employee can assign that budget to whatever that they might want to do, whether school is more important to them or airport pickup or whatever. And that's kind of what we're going to be releasing over the next few months.
And was that the result of like feedback from customers? Was that something that's been in the pipeline for a while?
Yeah. So in terms of the expectation management, we have a lot of obviously case managers, and they get lots of questions, and a lot of that is around expectation management. Lots of questions in the first 2 weeks are where the most anxious timings for individuals. So there's a lot of data we use to kind of understand what we need to do for those onboarding things. In terms of the marketplace, we have our product advisory board. I think one last year said a one-stop shop for relocation is what everyone wants. So that's kind of what we started looking into. Yeah. So user feedback, data, everything like that in terms of building the product.
Got it. We have another question for everyone. So Philip, why don't we start with you? How do you see relocations versus remote going forwards? And does this impact the overall employee experience while they're with the company?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because you always need to think of, okay, is the relocation taking place because the employee actually wanted him or herself to come from a certain country to another country, because they want to change their way of living, their standard of living, or just have a different experience? Or is it simply about, I've found this job and I actually want to stay in the environment where I'm used to? So that's where I think it's always about the motivation of the people relocating. On the other hand, I think a very important aspect, and that's what we as a company are offering already, a work from anywhere kind of policy in a certain list of countries where we allowed within the EU. And that gives definitely a different twist to the employee experience overall, and puts us as an HR department or people organization at a point where it's getting very challenging to look at all these different regulations in all the different countries and going after the demand of employees. But at the same time, also, how do you keep the culture and the values up for what you want to do of collaborating online, how to fly people in, because you do want to have still the human interaction. And that's something which I think is interesting, not only from a legal aspect to look at EOR, but also from a cultural point of view, that you can really focus on the aspects which matter at the end of why are you working for a certain company, because you could potentially also go into freelancing and work for any company anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Scott.
Yeah, I mean, all of that makes sense. As I said, in my sort of regular quarterly or monthly catch-ups with kind of other groups of people professionals, this was one of the biggest topics of the last couple. And a lot of the companies that I've been speaking to are just stopping relocations, right? So it's you can join, but you can join through an employer record where you are. We're not going to invest in the visas. And that is kind of their new strategy. And that's a pure cost strategy to save during this time. And I think some of those are also saying then after a period of time where you've proved yourself from a performance perspective, relocation then may be an open thing. And this is something that we had at Google, and we've had at previous companies as well, where the expectation is you need to be with the company for a certain period of time, performance-wise, and use that then as we will then invest in the future in terms of relocating you, should that be your longer-term wish. I think that also kind of works at the moment, because there are so many talented people out there looking, and there are less opportunities and less flexibility, and more companies are saying, but then more companies are moving back to, you've got to be in an office, and we're a hybrid culture. We don't want to do that, but are also not looking at relocation. So I think we're in a situation where there's a lot of talent that have been used to having it all their own way for the last few years, and then unfortunately that's switched back to the companies being the ones that are in control. And I've spoken to a number of candidates. We have both. So we have people who are fully remote. I think we have 10 or so that are just working either in the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, and we've hired them on that basis, knowing that that's always going to be the case. And then we have others that we've relocated to one of our sites, London or India or the US. But we believe in a hybrid culture. We do believe in the office as much as we can, but we also understand that we're working in a space which is supply chain, which is quite niche, and to get some talent we're going to want, where they're going to have to bend a little bit and allow them to work from when they want to work. So yeah, it's a very interesting time. It will be a really interesting year to see what comes out the other end. But I don't think there's any one company that's doing one strategy. I think everyone is doing a bunch of different things. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think you summed up like all our thought processes and all the things that we think about. Reese, is there anything that you want to add?
I think from the employee experience side, yeah, I think this is super interesting topic. It's a topic that's very much a hot topic for us at the moment, similar to Scott's discussion. We do use employer of record either for visa gap purposes to fill a period of time, or with particular strategic hires. But you see a lot of companies who have gone straight to the far end of just saying, we'll hire you where you want remotely. I think there's a lot of challenges at how do you give a consistent experience in terms of onboarding people across many different time zones. How do you manage the risk that is still associated with an employer of record around, if you have particular senior members of staff or people doing market-facing roles? I think there's still a kind of permanent establishment risk that you have to measure as a company. So yeah, it's super interesting to try and find that balance as to when you use it. And obviously, the more countries that you are hiring people in, then local legislation is going to dictate so much of what a probation period looks like, what a notice period looks like, how many days annual leave is consistent, what is a consistent kind of reward policy. So the more you expand that out, the more challenging it is for you to have a consistent approach as a business as to what does our comp and bends look like, what does this all look like, because yeah, you're just adding more and more kind of murky water the more countries you have. So it's a really interesting challenge, and we're still similar to Scott. We're still office focused as much as possible. We have that hybrid culture, and just anecdotally from my own personal opinion, like I love being in the office. There's a lot of investment in the office and the culture, and having that onboarding in person. And yeah, when you start to use employer of record more and have people scattered around the world, I think it's more difficult. And you also have to upskill the whole business to learn how to manage people remotely when you never have that face-to-face time as well. So I think it comes with challenges, but they're not insurmountable.
Yeah, I think the challenge around making things as standardized as possible, but also adhering to legal requirements in different jurisdictions is one that we've all probably faced. And it's probably an ongoing conversation. I think that's all the questions that we've got for now. So thank you to all of you for participating. It's been a really interesting conversation. I hope that we can continue the conversation offline until we do something similar like this again, I hope. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Take care.